The estate was in the depths of night, and the only heir of the Abrams family was about to die. The maid dipped the towel into cold water, their house still not leaving hope. The girl standing by his bed also hoped to bring him to the grave at any cost. Rubbing the master's cold skin, the maid looked up at her. What a poor thing. Lady Cordelia had not taken her eyes off the gentleman for a day. How lucky he was with his wife. The maid looked at her mistress with pity. He will definitely wake up. But the girl didn't say a word, but just continued to look. Please, take a rest, the maid persuaded her. She will look after the master. After all, it's Lady Cordelia's birthday today. She suddenly smiled predatory, and it's true. The maid knows that the mistress sat with my lord every day, but today she will stay with him. It was so sweet of Emily. The girl broke into an unnatural smile, but he was still her husband. Cordelia will just go out onto the balcony for a short while to breathe some cool air. Of course, take your time, the maid said sympathetically. And then the girl will make a wish for her husband, and on her birthday it will definitely come true. Emily looked after her. The lady loves her husband so much it breaks her heart. It had been 5 months since he had been in a coma, and my lady was chained to his bed. I wish the young gentleman would wake up soon, as Lady Cordelia wished. The girl closed the door behind her, and her face immediately changed. Damn. She needed to act quickly. Cordelia hurried to the high edge of the balcony. She quickly found the brightest star in the sky. This was her last resort. The heroine folded her arms in front of her. If this didn't work, all she could do was jump down. Sacred star that protects Vasquez, Cordelia closed her eyes and whispered, "Please fulfill my wish." Legend has it that a star favored the Vasquez heirs, and at 6 o'clock, Cordelia asked it for a huge bear. And at 9, the girl wanted to become a fairy tale princess. And already at the age of 14, the heroine asked for only one thing: wealth. None of these wishes came true, and the girl never got angry at the star. And if the star really protects the Vasquez, then it should fulfill this wish. Cordelia squeezed her fingers tightly and kept repeating, "Please, please." She looked up at the sky and whispered in a trembling voice, "Please kill my husband." Suddenly a scream came from the room. What did this idiot do? Poor Emily hung her head. She was so sorry. Next time she would lose her arm. "Her dear boy is soaking wet," the widow hissed. "Fix it quickly." How dare the parasite leave her sick husband unattended? What if he gets sick? "Emily will clean everything up right now." The maid began to wipe Craig's face with a trembling hand. "That's how she abandoned my son while I was gone," Ursula roared. "Just look at her." Cordelia looked down and apologized. It was her fault. She didn't keep an eye on him. This nasty girl thinks that an apology is enough. The widow's head is splitting from the fact that she has such a wretched daughter-in-law. The woman rushed to the bed with a tragic look. Her poor son, his mother is about to go crazy. The widow hugged his hand. "For your mother's sake, wake up quickly." Cordelia rolled her eyes as if he were her own son. The stepmother gave her a withering look. "My poor Craig." Cordelia immediately began to howl tragically. "Stop standing there and wipe it off," the stepmother hissed. "Honestly, no matter what this parasite does, there's no use in her. When this idiot finishes, let her go to the temple and pray with all her heart until the morning for Craig to wake up." What a lying snake. Now that the former count is dead, she is afraid that she will simply be thrown out of here. They were ready to tear each other's throats out while Craig was conscious. Damn, once this piece of crap showed up in the Abrams family, everything went wrong, and she's from one of the sacred families. A trashy family that sold their own daughter for some 500,000 linkits. They couldn't let this scum into their house. The widow threw at Cordelia and slammed the door. The heroine clutched the wet rag, humiliating but true. Cordelia was born into the House of Vasquez, one of the 8 great families. According to history, 8 heroes of noble blood founded the Kingdom of Elka. The first king was William, but power was distributed among all the heads of houses, and Cordelia was the heiress of one of the 8 sacred families. And yet the girl's family experienced a series of misfortunes, and only the ruined lands left to her father remained. Dom Vasquez fell into poverty after his unsuccessful speculations, and then the scoundrel sold his daughter to pay for his treatment. "Please," Cordelia begged him, "this scoundrel has 5 mistresses and a cruel character." The girl could have found money for her father in other ways, but he didn't care. The father slapped his daughter across the face. "Shut up! Abrams will come for her in the morning, and the brat will put up with everything." How dare this brat contradict her father? Her dead mother must have raised her poorly. My sister would have gotten married one day anyway, so why not do it for the sake of the family? The girl was riding in a carriage to the wedding, but at that moment she died. Her father forbade her to return to her home even in death, and there was only hell ahead. Drops from the towel and tears mixed on the floor. She couldn't stand this place any longer. "Lady Cordelia, I'm sorry," said the maid, carefully taking the cloth away. "It's all her fault." Madame came into the master's chambers so suddenly that Emily was at a loss. The maid will take care of everything, after all. It was she who spilled the water, and the mistress needs to rest. Emily began to fuss around the sick man. The bed was not wet, and that was good. And Cordelia's only salvation was the kind servants who took care of her. There was almost no life left in the heroine's eyes. If only Craig would die, she could finally leave. "So she is the heiress of the Vasquez house." Craig examined her. "Her face is tolerable, but what about the rest?" And on the very first wedding night, he brought his mistresses, Alicia and Elizabeth, and ordered them to be indulged in everything. What a jerk! He should have died 5 months ago when he fell off his horse. Cordelia had dreamed many times about introducing the degenerate to her friends. Death and punishment. At this point, Emily ran a dry towel over the patient's hand and squealed. "Lady Cordelia, look," she jumped up immediately. The gentleman moved his finger. No, animal fear flashed in the heroine's eyes. She would not survive this winter. A tear rolled down the maid's cheek. It seemed the gods had fulfilled her mistress's wish. It couldn't be. Cold sweat was running down the girl's face. Emily must have imagined it. But the lifeless body, as luck would have it, rose up and began to make sounds. Damn. Cordelia was supposed to be a widow tonight. That damn Vasquez star messed everything up. Emily immediately rushed to the exit. She had to tell Madame that her stepson had come to his senses. The girl's nails dug into her knuckles. What a stubborn bastard. The revived husband immediately groaned and grabbed his head, wondering what was wrong with him. Damn. Seeing his disgusting face again, Cordelia bit her lip. "Innocent wife mode is on, Craig, dear. You're awake," she chirped immediately. Cordelia began to nervously stroke his hand. Her darling fell off his horse, doesn't he remember? Craig was unconscious for 5 months, and it seemed like an agonizing eternity to her. Why did he make such a face? Did he really overdo it? The girl thought to herself. A wheeze escaped from the chest of the revived one. "Where is he?" Cordelia froze over him in shock. "You're in your bedroom, dear," the girl said warily, and he began making unintelligible sounds. The girl forced a smile, saying he should lie still since he couldn't even utter a word. The resurrected husband turned to Cordelia and croaked out his name. It couldn't be. The heroine immediately recoiled, not believing her luck. The gods had heard her after all. A shrill cry echoed through the estate. How could these idiots have screwed up so badly? Craig finally woke up, and now these idiots are saying that he doesn't even remember his own name. "Useless doctors!" the stepmother roared. "So many tests have been carried out, and all to no avail." The family doctor and his apprentice bowed their heads guiltily. They were terribly sorry. The doctor asked them to forgive him. They did everything they could, but the woman got even more angry. "Shut up and help him already. And if anyone finds out about this, their title will be taken away from their house. Relatives or not, everyone wants Craig's title." "Amnesia. And how should I deal with it?" the lady persisted. "Let them say that all this is not true." And a smile appeared on Cordelia's face. Perhaps she had not been abandoned after all. The stepmother immediately shot her a withering glance, and the girl swallowed nervously. And then she immediately squeezed out a tear. Her dear Craig. Why did he have to go through all these trials? Cordelia beat her chest in defiance. She would do anything to restore her beloved's memory. "They are husband and wife," the girl sobbed tragically. "Please let me talk to him. If Cordelia tells him about their days together, then perhaps he will remember everything." The stepmother hissed with a stony face. How dare the parasite waste their time on such nonsense? "No, it's true." The doctor immediately picked it up. Sometimes people's memories returned just like that. The lady rolled her eyes. Wow, for the first time someone considered Cordelia useful. He should hurry up. Until Craig's greedy relatives found out about it and started digging around. "Please don't worry," the girl smiled. "She will take care of everything. And while Craig is vulnerable, Cordelia will get rid of this family once and for all." In the next few minutes, the heroine was already searching the bedroom. Damn, where is he? The girl has already looked through every corner of this room. It should be in this drawer. Then her fingers felt something, and her pupils dilated with happiness. Found it. Cordelia raised the divorce papers above her head with a victorious air. The heroine hugged her treasure to herself. She had already thought that the documents would be of no use to her. All that was left was to deceive her worthless and forgetful husband and force him to sign the papers. And then Cordelia will be free with a ton of money, and goodbye, losers. A tear rolled down her cheek. The girl was happy just from the thought of it. The heroine clutched the piece of paper. Now she had to act quickly before Craig remembered anything. The bedroom door creaked. "Darling, I'm coming in," Cordelia chirped. The girl, with the most serene expression, asked how he was feeling and whether his memory had returned. The sick man looked at his guest with displeasure, but Cordelia didn't know any better. "And what does she think?" Craig said sharply, and his hand trembled treacherously. "This body is so weak. It was irritating. It seems that the husband is angry again. Then it will be more difficult for Cordelia." The girl smiled. For now she would just play along with him. And then he will wait for the right moment and force Craig to sign. Darling couldn't even imagine how happy his wife was when he woke up. Cordelia prayed to the stars every night for her husband to return to her. But the young man seemed completely unmoved. He glanced at her from under his brows and said only one word, her name. The heroine blinked her eyelashes, saying, "Sorry." Craig rolled his eyes and said her name. The girl coquettishly apologized. Her husband didn't remember anything. It had completely slipped his mind. Her name is Cordelia, and she is his wife. But what about his wife's last name? The girl was born into one of the leading families. Vasquez, that means Vasquez, Craig repeated, as if tasting her words. And then, with obvious disgust, he looked Cordelia up and down. And he rolled his eyes. What just happened? The girl flared up. She is worth nothing to him at all. Previously, Craig looked at her at least with lust, but since he woke up, something had changed in him. Apparently, the fight with death had changed him. And where is this estate? Craig suddenly asked. The Abrams house is located between the Vasquez and Harst properties. What a relief. And what that was supposed to mean, Craig gave her a steely look. She didn't need to know. Besides, the young man didn't want to waste his time and hissed, "Tell me what you wanted already." It seems the girl was upset when Craig woke up and didn't come for an examination. They must not have liked each other very much. What the hell? Cold sweat was running down Cordelia's face. Had falling from his horse really made him smarter? But it's even better this way. The girl came here to sort something out between them. Cordelia was sorry she had to do it so soon after he woke up, but that was Craig's last wish. And then the girl handed her husband a piece of paper. "Put your signature here." Craig looked at the divorce papers skeptically, and hadn't separation been a painful ordeal for her? The girl does this only for her husband. It was Craig who wanted a divorce before he fell into a coma. A mocking smile appeared on the young man's face. Craig declared that he loved Alicia and Elizabeth with all his heart. But not Cordelia. Cold sweat was running down the girl's face. Why is he grinning like that? In short, the husband announced that he would marry one of his mistresses, but what should Cordelia do if he loved another? That's why the girl decided that it was better for them to separate. She had already signed it. The young man crumpled the document and carelessly threw it on the floor. Cordelia almost lost consciousness. What Craig is doing, he crumpled up her precious piece of paper. The young man lost his memory, but not his mind. Craig gave her a menacing look. Everyone in the area knew how terrible their marriage was. The girl must have thought this was the perfect chance to get a divorce since her husband had gone crazy. Her face immediately turned pale. Craig himself said that he could no longer live in a marriage with Cordelia. "Stop acting like a cheap novel heroine." Cordelia froze in shock. She understood why a wealthy family like the Abrams would take in a parasite. The Abramses must have paid well to ransom the Vasquez blood, and she hoped they would just let her go. There was no love in this marriage from the start. Cordelia was sold to the Abrams like a commodity. The round is over. The girl was killed by the cruel truth. Who is Craig? This guy was acting completely different from before. It sent shivers down her spine. And again that smile appeared on Craig's face. Who is he? Of course, he is her husband. Even if she didn't dream of getting a divorce, she now belonged to the Abrams for the rest of her days. Cordelia squeezed the document angrily, and now let her tell the young man in detail about his past. The girl sighed. There was no choice. She would have to lie low and wait for a more opportune moment. Cordelia isn't lying to him. When Craig was 15, they said he was illegitimate. The young man closed his eyes tiredly. They were done for today. But why? The girl could still tell him so many interesting things. Enough. Craig waved her away with disgust. He would get tired if he continued listening to her. What a pity. The heroine then wanted to tell him that as a child he ate his own boogers. Sweat was pouring down the young man's face. It seemed he was really getting worse. After all, Craig just recently came out of a coma. Let him rest, and then she perhaps will go. Stop, the young man suddenly said. He had one request for Cordelia. The girl's eyes immediately widened. In this house they didn't even trust her to feed the chickens. Whatever she imagined, Craig's request is completely simple. He needs Cordelia to send the letter for him. She can handle it, can't she? What letter? She asked with genuine interest. It's none of her business, Craig immediately growled. Not only did the bastard throw away the divorce papers, but he also decided to make her a servant. Cordelia also has the right to refuse. You will send it yourself, she threw at him. The girl is not his servant at all, so if Craig wants to send a letter, let him call the servants. Since he woke up, no one had visited him, and anyone would want to poke their nose into a letter from a count whose title was under threat. And the girl brought divorce papers as soon as her husband came out of his coma, which means she doesn't give a damn about Craig. She is only absorbed by the idea of getting out of here because there is no one in this house. There was no need to clarify this. Then let Craig sign the divorce. If he does, the girl will help him. Isn't the price too high for a simple letter? Then Cordelia refuses to help him. As Craig said, she was sold here as a bride for pennies. And is it really surprising to him that the girl so wants to get a divorce and run away? And to be honest, the whole year in this damn family was pure hell for her. Craig had always considered the girl worthless anyway, and now he didn't even remember who she was. Tears were already welling up in the corners of her eyes and her voice was shaking. So please, just let me go. Cordelia immediately met his heavy gaze. It seemed she had angered him. Under the cover of night, someone's swearing was heard. Damn, it's been going on forever. It seemed like it was already the 100th step, but the light girls advised her to stop at the 7th. Cordelia was dying of shortness of breath. What kind of letter should be sent here anyway? Every time she sends a letter, Craig will write one letter of his name. And it is imperative to send letters from the highest point of the estate, and so on 4 more times, whether she lives to see the divorce. Just one letter for such suffering, but for the sake of a divorce, Cordelia will do anything. But even so, before sending the letter from here, he probably needs to get his head checked again. It's all too suspicious, and how will Craig know that the girl read his letter? And in general, you never know what might come into the head of a comatose person. Suddenly he was planning a coup. It is her civic duty. What? Cordelia squealed. The letter was encrypted. Craig didn't even remember his name, so who did he write this code to? And if you think about it, his handwriting was completely different. How she didn't care about her own husband, he always wrote like that, Craig reproached her then. First memory lapses and behavioral changes, and now this. Wait, what difference does it make if Craig divorces her? Cordelia doesn't care. And the fact that the letter is very strange is none of her business. She needs to finish with it as soon as possible and return. So the girl just needs to throw it off, right? She slowly unclenched her fingers. And the suspicious letter inevitably flew down, ready. Just as the heroine was about to go down, a light suddenly illuminated everything around. What the hell is this? Cordelia began to back away in fear. Suddenly, a white snake appeared in the air right above the dome of the roof. And what should all this mean? It was definitely a magical mark, but Craig had been talentless since childhood and had no connection with magic. Cordelia placed her hand on her pounding heart, wondering what she had just done. With the first rays of the sun, news thundered through the estate. The head of the Atterley family was dead. The maid poured hot tea for Cordelia. Everyone is silent about it, but it is true. And what was the cause of death? The girl asked nervously. Officially, it was an accident. But who knows? The maid put the kettle on the table. It didn't seem like anyone believed it. If you think about it, the head of the house, Atterley, was a powerful magician. It was hard to believe that he could die so easily. Emily looked around and conspiratorially leaned towards her ear. To tell the truth, there was another one and a rumor. People said that the second son killed his own brother to take the place of head of the family, and probably this bastard has already approached the council to recognize himself as the heir. Even though her older brother's funeral hadn't even happened yet, Cordelia had pulled out a money bag. Good job. If Emily finds out anything else, let her tell the girl. The maid gave a thumbs up. Trust me. Death and rebirth on the same day? Who would even believe that? Cordelia slowly brought the mug of tea to her lips. It might serve her interests. Leonardo Atterley, the youngest head of the house, was always said to be a genius, born with the greatest power their kingdom had ever known. And such a powerful man died in some kind of struggle for inheritance. And at the same time, Craig suddenly woke up, who definitely should have finally died. But that's not all. That night, the young man used the family signature of the House of Attalay. The white snake rose into the air with the help of magic, no doubt, and Cordelia could not have imagined it. And no matter how much the girl thought about it, only one conclusion came to mind. Right now, inside her damn husband's body is not Craig Abrams at all, but Leonardo Attalay. There was a glimmer of something in the heroine's eyes, and if that was the case, this could be the perfect opportunity for her. Cordelia quickly placed the mug on the table. Perhaps her plan would work faster than she expected, and she will get everything she dreamed of. But what if this letter was just a coincidence, and the girl was wrong? Cordelia frowned. She had never heard of magic that transferred a soul into another body before. But on the other hand, Leonardo was a powerful genius, so it was probably possible for him. Here, the heroine suddenly jumped up from her seat. Why waste time, she decided. She would ask him directly. Damn, the young man cursed. Why did Leonardo's soul choose this one out of all the nearby corpses? This body is so weak, the young man's legs began to shake treacherously, and he collapsed exhausted onto the bed. It would take much longer to recover. Cold sweat was dripping down his face. He needed to find his body sooner, but he couldn't even move normally. Then a head poked cheekily through the door. "Darling, how are you feeling?" Cordelia chirped. "You can't tell from him," the young man hissed. "And why didn't the girl knock?" Cordelia swallowed nervously. "It can't be." The girl examined him right away. Craig is already walking, although the doctor said it would be a miracle if he could sit up at all. The girl broke into a smile. If it had been Craig, he would have already started whining, pretending that no one had ever known such pain. "What about the letter?" The young man crossed his arms in front of himself with displeasure. "Cordelia sent it yesterday." The heroine clenched her fists. Even his infuriating, arrogant face looked somehow noble. As Cordelia thought, he is different. Well, at least Craig's face is okay. The young man was dumbfounded by what she said. "My husband always boasted that his face alone was enough to make women hang all over him." Why? The young man began to quickly look for a mirror with his eyes. The previous owner of the body was also blind. Craig looked at his reflection with disgust. He really did say that, and with that kind of face. Cordelia smiled triumphantly. Now she understood that a noble soul was locked in such an absurd body. She would also be furious. "Maybe Craig wants soup," the young man immediately exploded. "It's that stinking liquid that even flies don't fly to." His tongue must be cursed now, because instead of "bring food," she hears "give me poison." And why did she even drag herself here? Cordelia smiled. They hadn't talked about Craig's childhood yet. "And that's all." The young man plopped down tiredly on the bed. "Go ahead, talk and get lost." The girl looked at him predatorily. It was time to finally beat the truth out of him. Craig first started reading at the age of 2, the young man thought. That idiot turned out to be smarter than expected. At the age of 4, his magical abilities manifested themselves. Craig roared, "There is magic in this red-haired one." If that's true, Craig must have been called gifted. I wonder where all that went. And at 11, the teacher admitted that he had nothing to teach the boy and gave up teaching. Suddenly, a threat began to be felt in the atmosphere around her, but the heroine continued. At 17, the young man became the youngest head of a family in the entire history of the kingdom. Such an unusual life. Cordelia looked up at him, worthy of the name Attalais. Suddenly, Craig rushed straight at her, steel flashing in his eyes. "Who are you?" "This bitch works for Maximilian. That's why she hasn't left the boy's side all this time." So this brat had gone this far. Cordelia squealed in fear. It was all wrong. Damn, everything didn't go according to plan, so this is how she's going to die. Cold sweat running down her face. Suddenly a wheezing sound came from Leonardo's chest, and he immediately staggered. The young man began to stagger, trying to find support. Cordelia approached him cautiously. "How are you?" "Don't touch me," he immediately roared in response and threw her hand away from him. And then he collapsed heavily onto the bed. Damn, this body is useless. And why did this happen to Leonardo? It seemed there was a misunderstanding. Cordelia began to approach cautiously. "Shut up and don't you dare move," the young man hissed. He didn't want to waste his last strength on this. The heroine's legs stopped in horror, as Leonardo had just said. The magician still has enough power to kill some person. Blue tongues of magical flame began to form around Leonardo, and she immediately froze. "It's incredible," Cordelia chirped. "Leonardo is in someone else's body. How can he use magic?" It was none of her business. This annoying leech would die anyway, Cordelia screamed in fear. Please don't kill me. I'm not your enemy. And seeing the approaching blue ball, she dodged to the left. What the hell? Leonardo stared at the screaming girl in shock. She actually dodged. The magician directed the fire along a trajectory that an ordinary person would not see. And who is she? This guy couldn't even get up a minute ago, and now he's throwing fire at Cordelia. She's definitely going to die. Don't kill, the girl began to cry. She had only recently become a widow, and it seemed that her life was just beginning. And in general, Cordelia didn't hide anything. She can simply see magic. When the letter fell from the roof, a white snake appeared, and that's how she guessed who he was. Cordelia isn't lying and can prove it. The young man has activated the fire again. It's easier for him to kill her. The girl dived behind the sofa, let Leonardo conjure something, and she would try to guess. And it worked. The magician bit his lip and thought about something. Cordelia immediately exhaled. And a blue bunny appeared in Leonardo's hand, so he could quickly say what he had conjured. How lovely, the heroine looked at the long-eared creature. Enchanted, it's a hare. Let's say the young man made a couple of light waves of his hand, and another figure appeared in his palm. It was a deer. Leonardo made a few more movements with his hand, and now he conjured up a fish. And this is a chair or a cow. The young man snapped his fingers and the pictures obediently disappeared. It was a sheep. It's hard to believe that such a primitive person guessed almost everyone. Cordelia immediately beamed, even though it sounded rude. And the girl spoke. Leonardo sighed. Well, why having a gift? Didn't she try to study magic? Cordelia was even married off for money, so she could not afford her education. Then, probably, it wasn't Maximilian who sent it. We're talking about the brother of the year who stabbed Leonardo in the ribs and killed him. I'm not dead, the magician roared. The girl only heard such rumors. Why shout right away? The young man immediately thought, this means that the rumors have already reached the capital. That's right. Everyone knew that the younger brother had killed the older one and asked the council to recognize him as the rightful heir of Attila. What a little bastard. Cordelia immediately flew up to the magician, so Leonardo believes that she has nothing to do with it. Or he thinks that the little rascal is so smart that he foresaw everything in advance. And he recruited Cordelia, forcing her to marry Craig several years ago. And indeed, the young man rolled his eyes. Maximilian was always a bit slow and couldn't possibly pull off something like that. Why is she staring at Leonardo like that? What does she want from him? A divorce. Velcro doesn't think it's inappropriate to compare her divorce and Leonardo's problems. Of course, Cordelia immediately moved closer. 6 services for 6 wonderful letters in the word divorce. And they both end up winning. Cordelia is just suggesting that they work together. This should be done with someone you trust, and Velcro thinks Leonardo trusts her. Would Leonardo have given an important letter to someone he didn't trust? Well, as expected, it will be much more useful to kill her than to shut her up. That's certainly an option, she said in a trembling voice. One wrong word and she's a corpse. But here the magician had no one he could trust, and Leonardo himself could barely move. And so he has no other option but to stay here, Cordelia announced happily. Let the magician not try to cope on his own. She will serve him until he returns to the house of Attila. And since Cordelia will become his assistant, in exchange Leonardo must give his word that he will not kill her. What a generous offer, the young man muttered through his teeth. But that's not all, is it? It worked, she beamed. From now on, everything will go the way she wants. Cordelia wants to become Lord Leonardo's successor. Don't even dream about it, the young man immediately said. Why? She whined. Didn't Leonardo even try to teach her? Even those who have mastered magic since childhood have difficulty mastering it. You might not think so, but Cordelia was known as a gifted child as a child. She was gifted, the young man asked again, or simply smart compared to the villagers. If Cordelia becomes his student, she will study hard. Does he feel sorry for her or something? And this is all for my father. He is terribly ill. They have already tried all the medicines, but nothing helped. Her mother passed away, and Cordelia couldn't even help her and wants to save at least her father. The leech won over the servants, straining to squeeze out tears, and there was no shame in that. You're annoying. Tell me the real reason, the magician hissed. The truth is she needs magic to escape from reality. After the divorce, she wants to become independent and not think about money by opening a shop selling magical items. And since Cordelia can see magic, she can make money by telling whether objects are imbued with enough magic. or cursed, and if the girl can also use magic, then she will be in chocolate. So the heroine doesn't need any great magic, just a couple of simple spells. This means that after the divorce, the girl does not intend to return to the Vasquez house. Leonardo didn't listen to her. These people sold Cordelia to the Abrams for pennies. No, the magician said in a steely voice. But why? Tell me, why? Cordelia still did not calm down. A couple of simple spells, a third-rate appraiser in the shop, and she dares to express a desire to become his successor. Even a stray dog wouldn't disgrace Leonardo like that. It would be better if he made him his successor. Cordelia swears that she will not tell anyone that she studied with the great Leonardo. And why should she believe him? She swears by her family. The magician rolled his eyes. Cordelia would have sold out her family for a chocolate bar. How cold Leonardo is, the girl whined to him all night, but it was all in vain. That's where they finished. Let the leech go. The young man was tired. Cordelia will not give up. This is the chance that the star that protects the Vasquez has given her. It will come tomorrow. And he will also bring soup from the chef, and yet her murder costs Leonardo's last strength. So the young man doesn't give up so easily, what the leech muttered there. Cordelia is glad that his hearing is fine, but Leonardo tried to blow her head off with his thoughts. Feeling the back of her head burning, the girl hurried to the exit. What a pesky woman! Leonardo collapsed exhausted in bed. His chest felt a sharp squeeze. It must have been because he was using magic. The young man never thought that he would feel worse from such a small amount of magic. The magician's face changed dramatically, damn Maximilian, if it weren't for this degenerate. He's sitting there, probably smirking, thinking Leonardo is dead. But this brat will not laugh for long. The young man swears that he will kill him with his own hands. The next morning, Cordelia kicked Leonardo's door open, wondering how he was doing without her. The girl brought him some snacks, and Leonardo was already dreaming that they contained poison. "Get lost," growled the magician. It seems someone said, "Pour some tea, Cordelia just brewed some fresh." By the way, the murder was committed by the butler. The young man slammed the book shut in anger. She also loves to sing and dance. The magician rolled his eyes. How gloomy. The only dance she can do is a round dance. Unfortunately, with the first ray of sunshine, a squeaky voice was heard again in the magician's bedroom. Leo had cute pajamas. The leech was tired of living. The poor fellow reached to his temple. Her annoying voice was giving him a migraine. The sight of her made the young man feel sick. His face immediately turned pale, and he had difficulty holding back the urge to vomit. But could Cordelia ever get tired of visiting her own husband? She chirped. If people like the leech could learn magic in this world, there would be no mages left. Cordelia hasn't said anything yet. But her sunshine hadn't had breakfast yet. Cordelia smiled. Let's eat together. If he calls her that again, Leonardo will burn her tongue. Cordelia swallowed, and she hired a new cook. The young man would not eat her poison. The girl ordered the maid to come in with breakfast. They'll start with hot soup. The girl poked the patient with a tray. The soup seems too hot. Cordelia raised the spoon to her lips and began to blow. How disgusting. Come on, just one spoonful, the girl persisted. She drooled into the spoon and wanted the magician to eat it. She was completely out of her mind with greed. Leonardo pushed the hated soup away from himself. Hot soup splashed onto Cordelia's wrist and burned her hand. The girl immediately pulled her back. Leonardo didn't want this. It was her own fault. The maid immediately became concerned about her mistress's hand, but she told her to simply take the plate away. Emily looked at her mistress with pity. If she needed anything, my lady should not hesitate to call her. Cordelia didn't think that Leo could be squeamish. Let him eat her portion of soup. She didn't touch him. This stupid woman has already burned her hand. What must happen so that she does not come here again? Leonardo already said that he won't bother with her and teach her magic. What the hell? She's still hanging around here. But the girl likes it here, so she's dropping by, she said crisply. Leonardo keeps throwing her out of here, so what could she like here? The fact that Leo doesn't call her a pathetic nobody who just sucks money out of her, probably. And also, he didn't get drunk and didn't get violent, flirting with his mistresses right in front of his wife. Cordelia doesn't care about magic. Leonardo can just keep her company. The girl folded her hands in front of her, talking to him. For the first time, she felt like a human being. There was silence in the room, and the young man looked at Cordelia, as if noticing something for himself. And then he said abruptly, "Give me your hand," and extended his palm to the girl. "Give me your hand, I say," Leonardo exploded. Without waiting for a reaction, Cordelia immediately extended her wrist. "Here." And then the young man began to move his fingers over her burn, and she felt warmth. The heroine's cheeks flushed treacherously. It must have been the healing magic. "It's done," Leonardo announced. She admired her hand. Incredibly, the burn had completely healed. "And it doesn't hurt at all. And Cordelia's hand will be imbued with magic after this?" she asked, enchanted. "Get out already," the young man growled. "She has tired him out so much he needs rest." "What about breakfast?" Leonardo exploded. "That's it? Craig will become a widower." "Cordelia is already cleaning up as soon as Leo finishes resting. Let him just call her." "And one more thing," the heroine suddenly said, standing in the doorway. "Go away already," the magician ordered her. But the girl broke into a smile. She was grateful to him for healing her hand. The magician's cheeks immediately turned red, but he immediately asked out loud why she was grinning like an idiot. And then he shook his head. The girl got burned because of him, and still smiled at him. Suddenly, a man's voice was heard in the room. "Sir Leonardo, can you hear me?" Then the glass in the magician's hand began to tremble, and Leonardo immediately returned it to the tray. However, the glass was suddenly torn from the young man's hand and inevitably flew down. A piercing, ringing sound was heard in the bedroom, and the water began to flow out of the glass in a strange way. It seemed that something abnormal was happening, but Leonardo did not move. On the contrary, the young man waited patiently for the drops of water to take on the shape he was accustomed to. There was a cough in the room, another minute, and then the water began to rise into the air. "So you have already fulfilled my request," Leonardo said impatiently. And from the water a silhouette resembling a man began to form, and again a voice was heard. Of course, he did it. The water phantom has a mouth, Baron Spyron Langshaw, Lord Leonardo's right hand, and also the embodiment of sincere loyalty and steadfastness to the services of his master. And having fulfilled all the master's orders, the Baron arrived here. Spyron broke into a smile. The old man had been mourning him just recently and had already calmed down, Leonardo asked. "As you get older, it's harder to hold back tears, but oh well," the young man declared. "What about checking the coffin?" Lord Leonardo's body has still not been found, causing discord within the House of Attili. After all, without a body, a funeral is impossible, and Leo is willing to bet that his brother is sure that he is not dead. However, Lamy maintains the opinion that the owner is dead, and de Milchel has become close to Maximilian and is monitoring the situation. Lord Lamy didn't expect much from him, but he didn't expect de Milchel to turn away from him so easily. Pathetic rats, as soon as Leonardo gets his body back, he will burn out each of their souls. They say that Lords Birch and Mervon do not consider the fratricide a worthy leader, but wait, the old man brought this. The Baron handed the gentleman a potion. Leonardo would not have relied on it if he had not been wounded. A couple of days ago, the young man used a little magic, and he was paralyzed. This body is no good. But what if someone sees the owner? The old man shouldn't worry about it. And in the end, if Leonardo doesn't do this, something might happen. Moreover, it is unforgivable that Leonardo Attilea's soul is stuck in this ugly body. It was no longer Craig who was holding the empty flask in his hand. "I'm back," Leonardo said contentedly. "They say that Lord Birch and Lord Mervyn do not consider Maximilian a worthy leader." "Naturally, they swore their lives to me," Leonardo said proudly. Spyron cleared his throat, and he did too. "A man is always ready to sacrifice himself for his young master." "True?" the young man asked with a stony expression. "It sounds promising." "Thank you for the praise." The Baron immediately became languid, and Leonardo rolled his eyes. "In any case, when the young master is going to inform the others that he is alive? Now is not the best time for this. They still don't know what Maximilian has prepared. And right now, he is probably keeping an eye not only on Spyron, but also on everyone who supported Leonardo." Steel flashed in the Baron's eyes. That was it, and he had already noticed several rats hanging around nearby. "Don't come here yet," Leonardo said. "We need to find his body, because if others find it first," the magician's voice trembled. "His soul will not be able to return, and as soon as Leonardo's body is found, he will be buried, and this spawn will receive the approval of the council." As he had planned, and therefore able to officially take the position of head, Spyron understood everything. The man bowed, gathered as many servants as possible, and ordered them to begin the search, with the Baron leading them. "It will be fulfilled, by the way. And what about the Abrams family? We managed to find out a lot about them." "How can I put it?" The man scratched his head. "Their life is disorderly, and if they leave things like this, they will go broke." Ursula Abrams and her younger brother began to spend all of the former count's fortune immediately after his death. They took bribes from merchants and sold the rights to collect taxes. Leonardo could not have imagined that everything was so bad. This rotten woman even involved the servants in her dirty deeds. That's right, this lady did the same to others, and frankly speaking, it's unknown how this hornet's nest is still standing. Wouldn't it help to fake his own death? Leonardo will play the count for as long as it takes. As expected from the young master, a brilliant idea, Spyron overacts. And the countess who was here, old man, means Cordelia Vasquez. What about her? That girl looked pretty smart, Leonardo immediately added, compared to a Labrador. Maybe my lord will try to lure her to their side. Spyron is serious now. The man meant that he wouldn't always be there, and the gentleman wasn't in the best condition. Hey, Leonardo could still defend himself. Does the young gentleman by any chance consider her to be Maximilian's spy? The Baron immediately inquired. It doesn't look like the Countess was connected to him in any way, but maybe Spyron hasn't found out everything yet. However, the more Leonardo thought about it, the stranger it became. He couldn't believe that he had met a person who could see magic. Could it really be the Countess? If this is true, the very association of magicians throughout the Veles archipelago will be turned upside down, and once again Spyron has overplayed his hand. But could it all be a simple coincidence that Leonardo ended up in this body, and that woman wants to become his successor? Could Cordelia have known that the magician would take possession of this particular body, and therefore marry him in advance? Let the young master remember what the magicians have said for generations. Magicians don't have coincidences. The Baron extended his hand to Leonardo and waited for him to continue the sentence. The young man rolled his eyes but continued, "It was just fate that could not be avoided." "That's great. That means the issue with the Countess has been resolved." Leonardo bit his lip. And Spyron broke into a victorious smile, already anticipating a romantic turn of events. "No way," Leonardo roared immediately, as if reading his thoughts. Even if it was fate, he would not appoint that woman as his successor. And what's more important is that the magician here is dying of hunger. Leonardo folded his hands in front of him. Spyron understood everything. "Have some patience," the Baron chirped. "The food here is disgusting. The young man will never put it in his mouth." Did Spyron really spoil him so much that Leonardo doesn't remember the Baron as his nanny? The Baron cut the steak into small pieces and sighed. Sometimes he felt like Leonardo's mother. And the magician broke into a satisfied smile indeed. Spyron is the best when it comes to cooking. Maybe the old man shouldn't have become a magician. Spyron's cheeks immediately flushed. Leonardo was greedily stuffing his cheeks, but suddenly stopped. What were those strange sounds? Unable to contain himself any longer, the Baron burst into tears. The young man choked. What was he crying about? Spyron didn't even believe it when they met again, but now he sees how the gentleman eats with the same appetite. Milord was indeed alive, but when the Baron learned of his death, he fell into deep despair. And if it weren't for that letter, Spyron would have followed his young master to the next world. Leonardo's gaze immediately softened. How many people could boast of such a devoted circle? The young man gripped his fork tightly, swearing that he would repay the Baron's loyalty in full. Tears streamed down the old man's cheeks, and Leonardo already knew who would answer for them. The young magician thrust his fork into the table with a sharp movement. Leonardo will definitely return. A fire flashed in the young man's eyes, and when that happened, the old man would be standing next to him. Let Spyron wait a little longer. The Baron's face immediately changed. He believes in the master and will wait. Of course, with a full stomach, the night flew by quickly for Leonardo. But in the morning, torture awaited him. "Come to me," the female voice kept repeating. "Come on, one more step." Leonardo's hand began to tremble treacherously. "Who's the good guy here?" Cordelia chirped, but the young man immediately hissed, "I'm not your dog, get lost." "Seriously, Leo is incredible, he's so smart," she chattered. "The boy recovers so quickly." "This annoying woman is ignoring him again," Leonardo said with a stony face. "Who? Cordelia? And why would she do this?" the girl asked with the most serene look. In response, the young man hissed, "I hate." "You annoying leech, come here," Leonardo threw at her, and the two young men were already getting ready to fight. The door of the room swung open brazenly, and then a piercing squeal was heard. "Craig, son." The young people immediately shied away from each other, and Ursula screamed her son was walking again. "Hello," Leonardo muttered discontentedly, but the woman continued to approach him. The fool couldn't even imagine how worried his mother was about him. The young man disgustedly dodged her embrace. "I don't understand," Ursula muttered, clenching her empty palms, and her face entered Cordelia's best memories. Craig was indeed doing much better. "Yes, I noticed," she hissed back. "And what about his memory? The son remembers his beloved stepmother," the woman chirped again. Sweat was pouring down Cordelia's face, and Craig looked like he was going to throw up just from looking at the woman. He needed to answer at least something, and Leonardo nodded with disgust, and the stepmother was delighted. Her son remembered her. Incredibly, the girl looked at the two with a stony face, although Craig always had bad manners. In that case, everything should go smoothly. The woman stretched into a predatory smile. When Jared arrives, the stepmother clarified, Cordelia immediately whispered, "Jared Abrams is his cousin." One of these rats heard about the rumors and was now rushing here. Craig needs to show that he is alive and well. So that guy couldn't take the count's title. The son would handle it and wouldn't cause his stepmother any problems. Then the young man felt her bony fingers on his hand, and Cordelia swallowed. "Get your hands off me," Leonardo growled, and the woman raised her palms up in shock. But then she again put on a serene look, as if Cordelia was standing there like a pillar, let her work, and Ursula would come back later. The impudent puppy, the stepmother's face twisted, and then she hurried off somewhere. "Everyone in this house is so annoying," Leonardo clarified, hearing the door slam. "And why is this woman pretending that she and Craig were close?" The young man plopped down tiredly into a chair. After her husband's death, Ursula could only cling to Craig, and so the magician thought. Leonardo quickly figured everything out and even looked almost recovered, Cordelia announced. "He recovered," he repeated after her, but the magician could barely walk, but the doctor called it a miracle. Considering that Leonardo was supposed to be dead and his body still hadn't rotted, this can truly be considered a miracle. "I mean die," Cordelia whispered. "The magician died, and his soul moved into the body of this idiot. And of all the nearby corpses, his soul fell into this one." The girl squealed. "What happiness!" "Cordelia is so happy. Her husband is dead, and she was so afraid that this freak would come back. And this cold-blooded psychopath had access to Leonardo's food," Cordelia immediately hissed. "I mean, he's the one being cruel here." She was glad about her husband's death a second ago. Perhaps Leonardo is more humane. Who would talk? When a grieving widow asked to teach her magic, Leonardo mercilessly rejected her. Magic is not taught only because people constantly ask for it, but Leo recognized her talent. Wouldn't that be a loss of losses? Seeing magic and owning it are two different things, and where does such arrogance come from in someone who allows themselves to be walked all over? Magic should be learned at 10 years old, no later, but Cordelia dreamed of it since childhood. Well, please. "Well, she's had enough." The magician rushed towards her. It seems the words are not getting through to her, then he will say it more clearly. This woman cannot study magic because she is too old for it. Now if she finally understood everything, let her not raise this topic again. Cordelia didn't ask to be made a great magician, she sobbed, just to be taught a couple of spells. It even sounds insulting Leonard's successor could pluck a star from the sky. "What star?" The girl became inspired. "Forget it," the young man hissed. "This girl doesn't even know what stars are." "Now get out of here," the young man roared wearily, and Cordelia shuffled shamefacedly towards the door. By the way, she remembered that this leech was ignoring Leo again, just to say his piece. Not this time. "I said get out of here," the young man growled. "Lily will be here soon." Lily is his half-sister and Ursula's biological daughter, now Countess Dahlia, but she used to have a warm relationship with Craig. Leonardo will hug her when they meet, by the way. She despises Cordelia. Why would that be? The girl is such a sweetheart, Leonardo tells her that every time. Or maybe Cordelia called Lily to talk and then stabbed her body with a knife. The girl recoiled from Leonardo in horror. Why would she do such a thing? Then Cordelia realized his words. Leonardo was stabbed to death by his own brother. She would never do such a thing, come on, and Lily just doesn't like the fact that Cordelia is his wife, that's all. But why did Leo's brother kill him? If it was for the title, then the council would not recognize the suspect in the murder. Even the Great Council will not leave the head of the atelier vacant forever. It's only a matter of time, and that's why Leonardo needs to return to his body as soon as possible. It was so terrible, the girl approached the magician. If only she could help him with something. For example, if he made her his successor, she would be loyal to him. And she even helped to eliminate the scoundrel. Her brother, the young man, raised his eyes to her. She'd replayed Craig's accident scenario in her head so many times, it would definitely be helpful. Leonardo broke into a smile. Get lost. A magical flame flared up in his hand. A shrill scream echoed throughout the estate. No, I'm leaving now. If only she could win him over to her side, the heroine kept insisting. A drop of magic would have been enough for Cordelia. The horses in the stall neighed knowingly, and the tailed friend was happily eating his lunch. So what should I do, Roti? She turned to him. But the favorite stared sadly at the empty plate. Sweat was running down her face. Roti ate everything and was not full. On the other hand, who else should she spoil? Let the baby wait here. The girl will bring him more. But instead of following the command, Roti's fur stood on end and he barked loudly, asking what was going on. Lady Cordelia, can you hear me? The girl was frozen with horror because there was no one in the room. It seemed that this voice sounded in her head. The girl clenched her fists. But why then was Roti so worried? Cold sweat was running down her face. It seemed that this family had completely driven Cordelia crazy. But an unfamiliar voice pulled her out of her thoughts. I'm here. Wait a minute. A deafening squeal was heard in the stable. What the hell was that water ball saying? Then a cheerful little fellow jumped out of the water's surface, Baron Spyron Langshaw at her service. Where did this old man come from, and why did he know her name? Cordelia recoiled in horror. It is an honor for the Baron to meet her. Spyron is Lord Leonardo's right hand, and also a symbol of his loyalty and unwavering spirit, but the girl heard only Leonardo. And then she returned to the drinking bowl, because they were talking about the same Leonardo, the one who was the head of the Atelier family. That smug, curmudgeonly whiner who's always complaining about the food. Cold sweat was running down the assistant's face. Yes, this was quite in keeping with his master's spirit. So it means that the great master finally changed his mind and decided to take Cordelia as his student. No. The Baron immediately destroyed her dreams. His master doesn't even know that Spyron is dating her. But then what business could the Baron have with the girl Spyron bowed? He is here to help her. Help Lady Cordelia become Lord Leonardo's apprentice, but the Baron did not hear the joyful cries. It seemed that my lady was stupefied with happiness, but the girl said with a stony face, why? The heroine's voice became steely. A completely unfamiliar grandfather suddenly wanted to help. Spyron took a step back. Cordelia angrily placed her hands on her hips. First the Baron would tell her his motives. The Baron forced a smile. This lady was no less stubborn than his master. It's no wonder the owner kept her close. The Baron misunderstood. Leo was desperately trying to get rid of her. However, Cordelia was still alive, and knowing what his master was capable of, Spyron knew what he was talking about. Wait a minute. The girl was overcome with horror at the realization that it meant that the magician really had tried to kill her that day. Cordelia had just become a widow and could have died in this damn house without ever having found her freedom. The girl cleared her throat. So why was the Baron helping her if he didn't have permission to do so? Spyron wants to make Lady Cordelia their ally. The young gentleman is in bad shape now. And if Maximilian found out that his brother was here, the girl's life would also be in danger. In addition, the position of the real owner of this body is obviously not enviable. There are those who are aiming for Count Craig's place, and they could poison him in his own home at any moment. Spyron was right. But could Cordelia be of any use to them in such a situation? The Baron cannot always protect the Lord. He spent most of his time looking for his body. Well, the poor guy has a job. The Baron shrugged. That is, the Baron doesn't care about her at all. He offered a deal to protect his master. That's right, nodded Spyron. How rude. In this house there is no one better than the girl. Spyron has a hard time trusting people. Trust once cost them Lord Leonardo's life. Yes, Cordelia remembered, Leonardo's relatives were no better than her own. So if she becomes the Baron's apprentice, he will help her, and there will be no reason to harm her. Wouldn't it have been easier to kill Cordelia so that she wouldn't blab? No, she and the master changed their minds. They decided to keep a low profile and support the quiet life of her nasty husband. So, in order to stay close to the owner for a long time, you need to spend as much time with him as possible. Oh no. Cordelia changed her mind. She'll just learn a couple of spells and become a magic appraiser. What? The Baron was dumbfounded. The successor of the great Leonardo would become a third-rate appraiser. Unacceptable. Grandpa reminds Cordelia of a certain boy. And why are they so worried about their reputation? Cold sweat was running down the poor man's face. When the lady starts studying magic, she will understand everything. There was doubt on Cordelia's face in any case. Spyron would do everything possible to support her. Rhodey barked happily, and since the owner hadn't killed Cordelia yet, it shouldn't be too difficult. And what should a girl do? Spyron smiled. Absolutely nothing. And he definitely helps her. The owner will not accept the girl so easily, no matter what she does. But Spyron has a plan. Sympathy is the only thing that can melt the young master's heart. In fact, Lord Leonardo is very vulnerable. Even the sun can cause him pain. The girl rolled her eyes. If the sun had dared, they would already be living in darkness. Cordelia respects the Lord, of course, but how can one sympathize with someone so heartless? That bastard called her old. She would have strangled her. Then a voice was heard behind her. Lady Cordelia. The heroine immediately turned around. Craig's servant was standing behind her. Sweat was running down the girl's face. It didn't turn out very well. The girl immediately jumped up and decided to attack first. She was actually feeding Rhodey here. And what was he doing here? Cordelia glanced out of the corner of her eye at the drinking bowl, but the Baron was nowhere to be found. Phew, gone. So the lady was feeding a stray dog, who said, she roared, "This is the most precious dog in the world to her. And her handsome man is much more noble and intelligent than Craig's henchman." Rhodey proudly raised his wet nose. If the redhead ever hurt her baby, Cordelia would make sure he was treated much worse. The only thing that grandfather said was to awaken compassion in Leonardo, and how the hell was she supposed to do that? The doors of the magician's bedroom opened brazenly because he missed Cordelia. The poor guy spat out all the tea. The girl managed to dodge. Maybe the gentleman wanted a good book or the latest gossip. Maybe the fresh air will invigorate him. Cordelia opened the curtains. It was much nicer that way, the young man immediately hissed. Or maybe a heart-to-heart talk. A deafening roar was heard in the room. Get out. Go away, you're so annoying, he shouted. Cordelia swallowed nervously. That's probably enough for today. The girl immediately ran out the door, and behind her the sound of breaking glass was heard. She made it in time. And yet today Leo endured it longer than usual, which means things have moved forward. Someone's feverish steps were heard in the corridor. This is terrible, Lady Cordelia. The frightened voice seemed to belong to Emily's maid, and a cold sweat ran down Cordelia's face. Madame Lily will be here soon. The poor thing blurted out in horror. What should they do now? True, Cordelia breathed out immediately, and that's the only reason Emily made such a fuss. Milady knows how cruel she is, and that woman said she would stay for a long time this time. All the servants are terribly scared. This nasty lady was always so rude to Madame. Doesn't it bother her? Well, sooner or later she will have to get out of here. But to be honest, the girl doesn't think anyone hated Lily as much as she did. A snake hiss echoed throughout the estate. It's been a long time since we last saw each other, Mother. Lily had been gone for a long time, and this time she planned to stay. Cordelia reluctantly curtsied. Now it begins. Just look, the girl hissed. Her husband is very ill, and this insignificant parasite is just chilling out here. This girl is lucky. If Craig died, it would be a great excuse to throw her out of here. What a pity. There is no place for such a brat among the Abrams. How many more problems will befall their family because of her? Cordelia closed her eyes and imagined throwing the thing over the cliff again and again. But when I said out loud, "Thank you for coming all this way," Lily rolled her eyes and hissed, "Shut up." And then she glanced at her mother to see how Craig was. He was in bad shape, although he was gradually recovering. In fact, he has problems with his head. The woman sighed theatrically, or rather with his memory. It's complicated, and there were already problems with those who were claiming Craig's title. They started to act. What are you standing there for? The girl threw Cordelia aside. She couldn't wait any longer and wanted to see Craig. Stop! Ursula yelled after her and switched to Cordelia, asking why she froze. Let her quickly run after Lily. The heroine reluctantly followed her, as if this crazy woman would listen to her. There was a shrill scream from behind the door. Damn, Craig was joking, right? How could the rascal forget her? They had been together since childhood. The young man looked with disgust at the annoying and noisy girl she was carrying. How could he not remember her? Lily refused to believe it, and Craig found Cordelia with his eyes. Hey, get her out. The girl gently touched Lily on the shoulder. It seemed that Craig was not feeling well yet. It was better for her to spend time with Madame. But Lily rejected her hand with disgust, as this poor girl dared to touch her. This worthless thing would never have become Craig's wife if it weren't for her last name. How dare she speak to Lily so casually? And although Cordelia had heard all this many times before, she would never get used to it. The girl clenched her fists and continued to repeat that she needed to be patient and that it would all be over soon. What the young man's keen eyes did not miss was what the hell she was doing. "Go away," Leonardo roared and threw the book aside. The plot here was more interesting. Craig shouldn't have gotten up. Lily could handle this girl herself, she immediately chirped. However, the young man threw Lily away from himself in disgust, like an annoying fly. "You," Leonardo pointed his finger at the heroine. "All these days Cordelia has not been silent for a minute. So why did the girl go silent now? Let her say what she wants." But Cordelia only looked pitifully into his eyes. "She can't." Lily bit her lip angrily. "Let that bitch get out of here. She wants to talk to Craig." It seemed that her scream had reached the pain threshold. Leonardo covered his ears. He needed to shut her up quickly. "Why doesn't Craig want to talk?" the young man roared. "Who should he talk to? A dummy whose family embezzled other people's money. This house and even this dress were bought with other people's money, without which her rotten family is nothing." Cordelia giggled maliciously, seeming to start to like his nasty nature. Yes, Cordelia may look and sound like an idiot, but she is from one of the 8 sacred families, the Vasquez. And it was not fitting for her to even stand next to some commoner. Lily almost fainted. Cordelia glared at her protector, asking why he had dragged her into this. This bitch wouldn't leave it that easily. How could Craig be so cold? Lily choked on her tears, but the young man was not affected. On the contrary, he rolled his eyes. "How much is too much if you are going to cry? Do it after you leave the room." The sound of breaking dishes was heard outside the door. Why did he do this to her? The girl was choking with laughter, and the face she made, and how did Cordelia endure it for so long? She couldn't get a divorce and she had no money, so she simply had nothing to fight back with. Besides, in this house she is not a person, but a tool for maintaining communication with the Vasquezes. In any case, no matter how much Cordelia hated them, she didn't want to leave this place empty-handed. So she didn't contradict them because she wanted to get as much alimony as possible. There was steel in the young man's voice. "How much do you need?" The girl stared at him in shock. Cordelia needs money so much that she is ready to worship and obey this filth. "Money," she repeated after Craig, as if tasting the word, this sum on which her life depended. Cold sweat was running down the heroine's face, and for him, most likely, it was nothing at all. And of course, he will never understand the significance Cordelia attached to the word money. Remembering her family, a disgusting lump formed in the heroine's stomach. My father's cold voice sounded in my head, "Reject the marriage, and who will buy him expensive medicine?" "Sister, I need fencing lessons. Marry him for the sake of the family," Leona kept repeating. It turned out that Cordelia's worth was not even enough to pay for medicine and fencing lessons. The girl immediately bit her lip and announced that it was probably time for her to go. Cordelia gave a routine curtsy, not even looking at Craig. "Wait," he said something wrong. "Hey, wait!" he shouted to Cordelia, but she hurried towards the exit. And finally she threw over her shoulder. "I beg your pardon." She thought that Craig had thrown away all his pride. But something still remained. A tired smile appeared on the heroine's face. The young man didn't understand anything. Cordelia said that she hated them, but she continued to come every day. And tears were already welling up in her eyes. Craig was right. She wouldn't come to him for some time. "Please rest," she said, and the boy was struck by what Cordelia had just said like lightning. A roar rang out in the darkness of the night. How could she do such a thing, followed by the sounds of breaking glass? The young man slammed his fist on the table. Why should he even care that she hadn't appeared for a long time? What did he do wrong? Leonardo just asked how much money she needed. I suppose Spyron cleared his throat. You hurt Cordelia's pride, and this despite the fact that she was looking after him all this time. She looked after him. The young man was indignant, but she only talked about herself, miscooked food herself every day, and brought it to Leonardo. And the Lord asked her about it, but she did it for her own benefit. Spyron sighed dejectedly. "Poor Lady Cordelia," the young man hissed. "Hey, whose side are you on anyway? The poor thing tried so hard to please the person who inhabited this body, and this is the result. This is what is strange. Spyron does not find it. Maybe she has developed some feelings. Then the assistant could not stand it and roared. This girl, even knowing who Leonard was, didn't tell anyone anything. And besides, Lady Cordelia is simply very kind." Looking at his master and comparing him to the girl, Spyron added, "You don't often meet people like that, do you? Why start yelling right away?" the young man muttered discontentedly under his breath. Even if that's the case, this girl made a big deal out of nothing, but this is the Vasquez family. The Lord knew that Dylan Attlee's second son, his great-grandfather, was connected to the Vasquez clan. So the next time Lady Cordelia comes, Spyron asks that she be treated with warmth. Leonardo looked at his faithful comrade with a stony face. What a traitor! Spyron raised his voice. The milord understood everything. The young man immediately jumped up. Yes, it was clear. It was clear. And then he puffed out his cheeks in resentment and turned away. Well, never mind. You can forgive me once. And after a few days, the young man lay in his chambers and waited. He waited for Cordelia to visit him, but she never came, and so the days turned to nights. What a stubborn woman. The young man stretched his back with displeasure. Sooner or later, she will come anyway. The next morning, Leonardo was drinking freshly brewed tea, but the girl did not come to him again. The young man inhaled the aroma of the tea and took a small sip. What a wonderful morning. Well, hasn't it become calmer without this woman? Leonardo thought to himself. And then the butler opened the curtains. What are you doing? I'll go blind, the sick man squealed. But last time my lord said that the room was dark. Leonard hissed, and I said, close it, are you deaf or something? Okay, the poor fellow chirped under the master's piercing gaze. What a fool. 4 days should be enough, Leonardo thought to himself. The frightened butler immediately turned around. My lord said something. Leonardo cannot wait forever. Although the magician had promised to handle this body with care, he swallowed nervously. It was time. Leonardo gripped his cane tightly, and a vein on it immediately bulged. Hey, I need some fresh air, take me to the garden, the young man immediately barked at the poor man. There's a path over there. It's well hidden from the sun by the tree branches. The butler pointed his finger in the direction. Leonardo straightened up proudly and announced that he would go on alone, and the gentleman was sure of it. It's just a garden. The magician rolled his eyes and added, I won't faint, go ahead. The butler had heard that my lord had lost his memory, but he did not think that he had lost his mind as well. It's so nice to be outside. Leonardo hasn't left his room for a long time. The young man noticed a cozy gazebo among the treetops. He would sit here for a while and then return. The maid in the bushes saw the approaching figure of my lord and was horrified. The girl immediately ran out of her hiding place in fear and snapped, I beg your pardon, sir, you can't go any further. Madame and Countess Dahlia are drinking tea there. Leonardo went berserk. You're joking with me. Let me pass. The maid bowed her head in resignation. Her voice trembled. She was very sorry, but she couldn't. Something was wrong here. There must have been another reason. The young man began to peer ahead. Then a disgusting female screech reached his ears. That's what you get, you worthless piece of trash. Here you are for such an arrogant answer. The young man immediately grimaced. Now everything was clear. Leonardo growled through his teeth at the maid, getting out of the way, and she immediately stepped aside. Cordelia stood in the gazebo, drops of wine running down her hair and dress, and in the hand of the vile Lily was an empty glass. The girl's dirty hair stuck to her face, and her gaze, as always, was lowered to the floor well. The sight was already familiar. Having noticed Craig, both reptiles immediately started babbling at the same time. But is the young man really allowed to go for a walk already? The two women went deaf. The Lord's voice rang with steel. He asked what the hell they were doing. Mother immediately chirped, Don't worry about it, dear. I'm just teaching the girl manners. And in this house they teach manners by pouring wine on others. The magician grinned. Although what can you expect from the ignorant? And Lily, as if nothing had happened, clung to his hand. If Craig went hunting with her, she would forgive him for that incident. Ugh, don't you dare touch me! Leonardo immediately barked at her and pushed her away with his cane. Something flashed in the magician's eyes. As he thought, forgetting about the pain in his body, the young man slowly approached them. With each step, the feeling of anxiety increases. The dirt cannot be removed from the blood. Lily immediately recoiled in fear, and her mother roared, Who do you think you're talking to? What came over Craig? His genes overcame the rotten genes of his relatives. Cordelia looked up at the magician in amazement, wondering if he had really taken her side. This time, Mother will turn a blind eye to rudeness. Let Craig leave before she changes her mind. The heroine rolled her eyes, of course. The old witch would definitely take it out on her for this. Rudeness, the magician exploded, and this old lady's mouth is like a cesspool, and at her age. So it was time for Cordelia to stop this. She patted the magician on the shoulder. "Please calm down, Craig." The young man didn't look well. His illness must be to blame. It would be better for them to return to the room. The girl looked at Leonardo with hope in her eyes, asking him to go with her. However, the magician had no intention of retreating. His gaze did not soften even for a split second. Leonardo removed his hand from her and roared, "Cordelia is going to pretend for a long time." But for some reason, the girl remained unperturbed. "What's wrong with him? Is everyone going crazy today or something?" Cordelia did not back down. Craig still felt unwell, so she asked them to forgive her. But Leonardo stepped forward. "Let that old woman apologize, and that crazy woman with the glass too." Lily turned white with horror. "That old woman," she roared. "She is his mother and the mistress of the Abrams family. How dare he say such a thing?" Cordelia hissed through her teeth. "What are you doing? I'm tired of living. They'll just leave here right now." "Don't bother me," Leonardo growled and poked Cordelia in the forehead with his cane. And then this cane hit the table with a loud bang, and the woman was immediately stunned with horror. Leonardo looked at her with a beastly gaze. "Spotting prey. The mistress of the Abrams family, you say?" Cold sweat ran down the woman's face, and her previous confidence vanished in that very moment. But Lily shielded her with herself. How dare Craig talk to his own mother like that? "Let him stand in line," the magician said in a steely voice and hit the table with his cane again. "That greedy witch stole all the estate's funds right after Craig's father died, didn't she? And this pig dares to call herself the mistress of the house, shamelessly inviting young servants into her bedroom." A deafening silence fell over the garden, and the woman's face seemed about to explode. "Well, well," Cordelia turned to look at her mother, dumbfounded. "Mom?" Lily said questioningly, staring at the woman. The two young servants took a step back in unison, and the maid almost lost consciousness. And the young man continued, "Or this woman would again blame everything on Mrs. Abrams's debt." "What nonsense!" Lily shrieked. "Craig should stop already. Mom would never do something like that." "Her mother stole money and used servants in her dirty deeds," the young man repeated again. "But that's impossible," Lily tried to argue, her voice no longer so confident. Ursula gritted her teeth. It seemed that poor Craig had completely lost his mind after waking up, and she ordered the servants to immediately take the young lord back to his room. The poor fellows rushed reluctantly towards Craig, but he continued, "Ken, Reynold, Charlie, and Edward." That witch called them to her. He should list them all. The servants were immediately dumbfounded. That these, they seemed to have quit. Ursula froze in her tracks. "Damn puppy, what is he talking about?" But having come to her senses, she tried to maintain a serene appearance. Where did Craig come from with so many nasty lies? The magician smiled. He knew not only that, those poor souls she forced to share her bed were now in an underground prison. And if, looking at their faces, the vile bastard remembers that she spent the nights with them, Craig will call them. "A blatant lie," Ursula croaked in rage. "Those idiots have long been gone from the kingdom," and immediately shut her mouth. The servants immediately froze in shock. Everyone heard her confession. Cold sweat was running down the scoundrel's face. "No, this is all a lie." The liar immediately began to justify herself. "It's all because of Craig." She pointed her finger at him. "He's making this all up to drive Ms. Abrams crazy. If the scoundrel wants to live, let her stay in her room and not stick her head out." The young man grinned. "But if the witch continues her dirty deeds, Craig will send her to the wasteland quickly and without regret." "Why is the boy doing this to her?" Ursula said feverishly. Sweat was dripping down her face. Craig had just recently been lying unconscious in his bed. "What the hell?" "The old woman looks very pale. Take her to the room," the magician said with a bored look. "Get your hands off me right now, it's simply unbelievable," the woman screamed. And Lily ran after her like a tail. Not knowing what to do, Cordelia's soul rejoiced. Leonardo is sure it was worth it, knowing her rotten character. This viper will definitely want to take revenge on him." But the young man did not answer. The old witch also poured wine on Cordelia, didn't she? That's right. Lily was just there to help. But why did the old witch do it anyway? Lily told her that it was Cordelia who threw her out of Craig's room. Well, she, in turn, simply used this as an excuse to take it out on the girl. But everything is fine. Is she completely stupid or something? Doesn't she have a drop of pride? Leonardo couldn't stand it. Cordelia actually thinks they'll give her money if she sucks up to them. If the girl simply tolerated them, then nothing would change. Cordelia swallowed nervously. She came from one of the most honorable families of the empire. She does not need to adapt to anyone. Cordelia Vasquez forgot what blood was flowing through her, and the girl immediately grimaced. And she threw a furious look at Leonardo. What did that bastard even know about her? The young man looked at her questioningly, asking why she was being stubborn. Of course, for Leonardo, she was simply being stubborn. What a fool! Cordelia grabbed the hem of her dress, even though she herself had the pride to tolerate such a fool. Her father sold her to this rotten family, filling his pockets with small change, and forbids her to return home even if she is dead. The magician can at least imagine what it's like to be born a girl into an impoverished, noble family. Tears streamed from the girl's eyes. Leonardo had absolutely everything from birth, without even trying. Cordelia doesn't want to hang her head either, but she has no other choice. So she better pretend that everything is okay and endure it. The girl collapsed, exhausted on the floor. "I have pride, you idiot!" Cordelia roared. How Leonardo infuriated her. The young man, completely spat upon by her, wiped his face with his sleeve in disgust. Disgusting. And then I thought, it seems Cordelia was right all this time. The girl, not expecting the magician to back down, immediately asked again what he had just said. No one has the right to judge others, so the young man was indeed wrong and asks for forgiveness for it. Cordelia froze immediately, and as an apology, without finishing his sentence, Leonardo leaned over her.